London and now resides in Charlotte, North Carolina, where he works for Wells Fargo as the head of commercial banking and operations. We are here today to learn a little bit about Cesar, something that each of us has probably experienced in our own careers. He will talk about a bit about his career in electronic design and manufacturing field and how he did a major pivot to be a leader of a financial industry. So as we invite Cesar to open up his mic and start to share his journey, I invite you to take a moment and reflect on your own careers and your pivoting points. Where were there opportunities that you didn't take? What held you back? Maybe you saved that for some Q&A. And maybe those pivots that you did take, and what did the journey look like after that? After Cesar shares a bit about his story and background with us, the fabulous, once again on the HITEC stage, Tiffany Tavares from Wells Fargo will lead us through the Q&A section. Tiffany has her own amazing story, and we are very, very happy and welcoming to these two high-tech individuals who are going to share with you for the rest of our session together. So again, I see the high-tech chat super live and active. I'll add my high-tech check-in in a minute, but welcome. Welcome, Cesar. Muchísimas gracias for your time and to tell us a little bit about your journey. Your mic is on.
Perfect. Gracias, Susana.
No, con gusto.
Really appreciate the warm welcome, and great to be here with all of you. I've been to other high-tech events a few years ago, so very familiar with the organization and what the organization does, not just in terms of developing Hispanic, Latino talent in the technology space, but also the scholarships and really how we foster students to get into careers in technology. So thank you for having me here today. Team, as you heard, Cesar Gonzalez, Cuban American. I am the son of Cuban immigrants, left after the revolution, and we're in Miami for a little bit, and that's where I was born in Hialeah Hospital. But I moved to Puerto Rico. I was just 2 years old, so really spent most of my life growing up in Puerto Rico. And from that standpoint, it's like I'm a first-generation college student. My parents and their siblings didn't have college degrees. My dad, his family had a farm and a warehouse, and my mom, her dad worked in aduanas or customs, Isla de Pinos in Cuba. And so, it was really important for my parents, having lost everything after the revolution. A big thing that they really tried to drive the message to my brother and I was around education and making sure that, my brother and I did go to university, did get a college education. And, they would say, hey, anything could be taken away from you, but no one can take away your education or what you know. That really stuck with me. If you look at my background, I got a bachelor's and a master's in mechanical engineering, and then I have an MBA as well. As well as a Six Sigma black belt on top of that. So I've always been keen in terms of learning more, studying more, kind of, what else can I learn? How can I enrich what I know? And really a lot of what my parents taught us growing up really stuck with me, even to adult life. So as Susana said, being an engineer, I started my career in engineering. I did internships with AT&T Bell Labs. For those of you that are not old enough to remember what Bell Labs is or was, there used to be Bell Laboratories was the research and development arm of AT&T, and I was in the fiber optic space. So did research in fiber optics, then the point of sale terminal design and manufacturing at NCR, and then did manufacturing and materials management. And really a little bit of everything that you can do in electronics, contract manufacturing with Solectron. And then that led me to being here in banking. About 2005, I made the transition to financial industry. So that's kind of a little bit in terms of the history. Really, when we talked about pivoting, right, and a major pivot for me was moving from the electronics design and manufacturing space over to financial industry. The funny thing is, like, this all came about because a neighbor of mine who was an examiner for the OCC, he said, "Hey, you know what? With your skills in engineering and your skills in manufacturing, I think you would do great in banking." He said they need people like you who can improve processes, who can drive, efficiency. When you look in, and especially in electronics design and manufacturing, gross margins are in the single digits. So imagine everything you learn in an environment where gross margins are single digits, and you bring it to a space where gross margins are much larger than that. And now you have a tremendous opportunity to drive an impact to the business, to the client experience. So that's really what opened the door for me to even think about the financial industry. And I was lucky enough that, interestingly enough, I found my job online. So it was an executive role, leading process design for First Mortgage. At that time, all I knew was I had a mortgage. I didn't know anything that went into the process. But it's like they took a chance on me and my skills. I could check every box that they had on there except experience in the mortgage process. Everything else I could check off in terms of Six Sigma, lean experience, process transformation, offshoring, right? All the things, automation, but I didn't have the actual financial process in place. But went in, learned it, spend time on the sites, seeing the process, spend time, reading up on it. Had a great team we put together of individuals who brought in different skills, project management skills, process design skills, some tremendous experience in the mortgage space. And we were able to really drive what we were set to do. The funny thing is they had asked me to commit to do it for 2 years. Within a year and 3 months, we were done with everything they had asked us to do for the 2 years. So that opened the door for me to then look at other opportunities in banking. And within the company I was with at that time was Bank of America. But that was just one example in terms of where I had to pivot. Even when I went from NCR to Selectron, that was an acquisition. And I was doing a rotation into manufacturing. My role was actual product design. And I had the opportunity to stay with NCR or go with Selectron. Contract manufacturer out of California, no longer in business. But I saw that they drove more of an entrepreneurial style process. They had these roles of customer program manager, where you ran essentially your own little business within the company. I was like, I want to do that. That really sounds exciting. So I took the chance and went with them, and went with that company. And I was getting my MBA at the time. I knew the MBA will help me get that role. I talked to the senior leader that managed that organization in the company, and I started doing my MBA projects at Selectron to show that I could deliver value. And wouldn't you know it, before I finished my MBA, I was a customer program manager. I had the role, and that just then opened other doors into running my own facility. Had the opportunity to go to Guadalajara for a few months to run a facility, to turn it around, the performance of that facility. So those were just examples where the opportunity either showed up, right? And I had to make a decision, and I had to go ahead and look at, okay, what is it that I want to do, and which option really delivers that long-term path that I'm looking for, and going in that direction. And then again, betting on myself in terms of that I would put in the work necessary to learn the new skills I needed to be successful in that job. And we all of you are here, right? You're here for a reason. You execute, right? You go ahead and execute. So sometimes it's just a matter of having that confidence in yourself to go ahead and take the step, knowing that you will go ahead and execute in whatever you do. And then, I know there's Q&A, so I'll, the last item I wanted to make sure I touched on was, throughout all these moves and changes, right, you learn a lot of things, right? There's a lot of things you learn about yourself. There's a lot of things you learn about the strengths that you bring. Earlier in my career, right, question myself on my own capabilities. And that's a challenge we all have, right? It's like, and honestly, I've met so many people from different countries, different cultures. We all have that concern. Is like, okay, do I really belong? Am I really ready? You know, questioning yourself. I know I had that challenge, you know, throughout my career. Even as recent, you know, before I moved to Wells Fargo, I was meeting with a gentleman. He was retiring, and I used to work for him in Hong Kong. And while I was in Singapore, he was in Hong Kong. And he was telling me, he's like, hey, you know, I said, what advice do you give me? He's like, the advice I will give you is go for it. Stop getting ready for the next job. Just go for the job. And the funny thing is, you know, by that time I was already an executive, right? So it's not like, you know, and he was like, you need to stop getting ready for it. Just go do it. You're ready already, right? And it was interesting. At the time I was having conversations with Wells Fargo, and the opportunity that I'm in came about. It was exactly what I wanted to do in terms of being back and running a large operations team, and having the opportunity to transform the organization and work with leadership that share the same vision that I had in terms of operations should run. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go for it, right? It's like, I'm not going to question, you know, if I'm the right one or not, but it's things like that that you learn throughout your career, and you're always going to question yourself. I mean, trust me, you know, even preparing for today, right? I question, am I going to get it right or not, right? It's like, you know, am I going to provide this right message? That's always going to be there, that voice behind you. And the funny thing is, that voice is, how do you use it to make yourself better, right? How do you use it to get more ready than the next person? How do you use it to go ahead and make sure you rock it in terms of, you know, when you execute what you're doing? The other thing is, many of you on the line are probably engineers. Engineering is like a superpower, right? At least for me. You know, it's funny, someone asked me, what's your superpower? I'm like, my superpower is being able to see the process, even though you cannot actually physically see it. So in financial industry, most of our processes are digital. But how do you see the process, right? It's really understanding how the activity flows between queues, between individuals, and being able to break it down and find where the problem is and go ahead and fix it, right? And that's something that for me, throughout the years, I was able to hone in on it. I think my experience in actual manufacturing really helped, and then able to transition that to financial industry. And then the other thing is, you know, a couple other things is, first, the fact that many of you are multicultural is a strength. In my time, I spent time in Singapore. I spent 3 years there, and I spent close to 2 years in London, in both cases doing regional jobs in the financial industry. And really, for me, one of the things that I found most helpful was I was already working within two cultures, being Hispanic and working for an American company, right? And I was working here in the US. Then I make the move to Asia, where you have multiple cultures, right? Asia is not just one culture, it's one continent, but it's multiple cultures. I had individuals from Singapore, I had individuals from China, Hong Kong, Japan, right? Korea. I had teams everywhere. And being able to understand and be flexible in terms of the nuances of the cultural differences that exist, and accepting those differences and being able to work with them on their terms and their culture, and not trying to impose mine, to me, that was a differentiator, because I was able to get things done a lot faster than if I were going in trying to impose my culture as the one that should dominate. So that's, you know, for many of you on the line, you all have that superpower too, right? And you're able to use it day to day. You know, many of you work for global companies, and you have those interactions, and it really gives you a leg up. And the last thing I'll say on this is really looking at the processes end to end. You know, many people go ahead and go into their jobs and they say, okay, this is my job, and it starts here and ends here. And that's great. And you could be really good at that. But to me, the differentiator in terms of career progression and really driving a much more significant value and difference comes in looking at things end to end, understanding the client experience end to end, whether we do it or we don't do it. I lead operations today, but as many conversations that I'm talking to the line of business and talking to sales and saying, what are you doing that's making the client experience difficult, or making it difficult for our operations team to complete the work that the client needs? And how do we work it to make it better? So it's really understanding that end-to-end experience and then influencing, or actually flat out changing and improving the end-to-end experience and not limiting yourself. I've seen that opens doors, not just in terms of having better results, but also in your own career. I've seen many people that start in operations and all of a sudden they end up in the front office. Why? Because they were looking end to end, they showed they could add value, they ended up learning more about what the front office was doing, and they ended up making the move over there. So it opens other doors for you that you would not, probably could not think of if you're just sticking in your place. Now, one thing to note, so I'm heavily involved in the employee network here at Wells Fargo. I'm the president of the Hispanic Latino Connection. And one thing to do is that I would say is throughout my career, it was later in my career, I started thinking of, hey, how do I get involved? So I was part of OLA at NCR. I was part of OLA at Bank of America. And, I was a mentor and things like that. But it was funny. It was when I was overseas, I started getting more engaged as an executive sponsor in Asia for the Young Professionals Network. And then when I was in the UK for the Women's Network. And I was like, you know what? When I get back to the US, I need to get more engaged with the Hispanic Network, because I am Hispanic, right? I should, be looking to what else I can do there. And so when I came back, I was purposeful in terms of making sure, not just being a mentor, and I was a mentor still for the Women's Network at the company I was with, but it was let me go ahead and have a leadership position and really help drive things forward to make a difference. And then coming to Wells Fargo, before I even started, I was talking to the prior president about sharing best practices and what we could do different and things like that, even before I started, just because of my passion around it. And the interesting thing is, you all know it, right? Being engaged in a network gives you that exposure to career development, gives you an exposure to leadership development. I see many individuals who become leaders through the network. I've seen that happen. They're individual contributors in their job, or they take leadership positions in the network. They go ahead and develop and hone in their leadership skills. They make sure they share that with their managers, and then management recognizes it and puts them into leadership positions. Because if you're able to lead others that don't report to you, you'll do great at leading others that actually do. And because you already have that capability and that skill to influence others, get them all driven to the same goal and driving the results. So wanted to make sure I share that with all of you. I'm going to pause there. I know Tiffany has several questions lined up, and I'm sure you all can contribute questions as well. So looking forward to that.
Cesar, that was incredible. And I have questions. I have questions all day. We can make this in a 6-hour session, but I'm not going to do that.
So waiting for you to come on a Sunday to have a dinner at home, but
you know what? I have 324 witnesses, Cesar. Okay, the joke's on you. But no, thank you so much for that information. I have a ton of questions, and I know that people will be adding some questions in the chat, and I have captured some of those so far. So I'll be interspersing that with ones that I have right now. So, when you look up the word multiculturalism, the definition reads the presence of and the support for the presence of several distinct cultural or ethnic groups within a society, within a community. So clearly your story reflects that, right? Not just in terms of your personal experience, but even the places that you've lived, right? This is very evident. So, when I'm looking at this incredible chat, right, I feel like I need my passport. We have people from all over the country, all over the globe on here, those who identify as Latino or Hispanic, but also those that don't, right? So for those who may not actually have ever considered that multicultural framework for their own narrative, what are the ways in which people can reimagine their own approach to, their own career path by centering multiculturalism?
Yeah, I think, for one is, first of all, be yourself, right? And play to the fact that you have your culture that you should be proud of, and bring that forward, right? It's like, but then, like I mentioned, in terms of my own experience, is using the fact that you have had to make sure that you're operating in a culture that's foreign to yours, and you've been able to be flexible. And in doing so, you are able to go ahead and be flexible with others and understand their perspective, right? We talk about, don't assume bad intent or always assume good intent, on someone, right? It's like, it really is all in our perspective, right? It's like, if you don't take an open mind and you constantly think that someone is doing something or saying something because of, bad intent, then your relationship is not going to go forward. By being multicultural, by yourself, understanding the differences that we all have in terms of our heritage, how we grew up, you're able to go ahead and convey a better message and really drive a better relationship. And I talked about Guadalajara, and that was, a funny example. I went there, right? And my first couple of days, I'm walking the line, and I mean, 90% of the things were wrong, right? I mean, they were like boxes stacking up, materials not available. The managers didn't know where products were at. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So I got all the managers together, and I'm there, I'm in Spanish, I'm a lot more passionate than in English in terms of when I speak. And growing up in Puerto Rico, I speak a lot faster in Spanish than I do in English. And it was funny because they were all like, yes, 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 yes. And then, a few weeks later, things are better and all that. We're having a drink, and they're like, you remember that first meeting you had with us? I'm like, yeah. They're like, we couldn't understand half of the stuff you were saying. You were speaking so fast. They're like, we just knew you were upset. You were clearly upset. So clearly something was wrong. We were not sure. And then at that point, I'm like, you know what? They're right. I should have slowed down, right? As I let my Boricua come out too strong in that, and I should have, gone ahead and really understood, in Spanish, all the words are the same, right? It's like, and making sure that I was opening up for that. But that was just easy, kind of funny example, right? In terms of where you can miss the multicultural element just because you think, hey, we're all Hispanic, so therefore, I'm speaking Spanish, they'll get it. But no, that was not the case. So, but again, to me, it's an advantage, even when you think of product development. So, here in Wells Fargo, we've used our members of the employee network to test Fargo en Español, right? Our online platform. They've also been instrumental in terms of products like card products and all that. And how do we take that forward? Here recently, our Black African American network, they contributed to Wells Fargo launching HBCU credit cards for the various institutions. So it's things like that where the fact that you have a different culture, not only does it help you working with others and collaborating and all that, but it also helps in terms of the contributions you can do in the business, whether you're in product development or not, right? You're going to come up with a different perspective and different ideas.
I love that. So it's interesting when you mentioned that the gentleman said, we had no idea what you were saying, you were talking so fast, even though, yes, a totally funny moment. But the reason why that's really important is because that takes a level of trust for someone to share that information with you, right? So I think that that's a really beautiful opportunity. And you also noted that someone shared another thing that stuck with you, which is they said that no one can take your education from you, which I love, your knowledge, right? It's yours. And it gets me thinking about the people that are in our circles, right? So can you share a bit more about the importance of being selective, right? And curating the people, the best people possible that you should surround yourself with. And how did you navigate that?
Yeah, and I'll tell you one of my mom's favorite sayings. Dime con quién andas y te diré quién eres. Tell me who you're hanging around with, and I'll tell you who you are. So it's definitely something that stuck with me growing up. But in terms of the business side of things, you know, the key is, you know, you want to make sure you surround yourself with people that you enjoy working with people that you can collaborate, that have shared values with you in terms of, you know, what you want to do and accomplish from a business standpoint. Similarly, outside of work, right? You know, people have shared values, people who, you know, and we don't have to be all the same. Actually, a lot of my guy friends are not Hispanic, you know, have several Hispanic, but several who are not. And, you know, I have different things in common with each of them, right? Some of them is we exercise together. Some of them is, hey, we like sports, the same sports. Some of them, you know, they're completely different connections that we have. But it's the key area is those people around you, and let's stick to work. Those people around you are those that, if they're your leadership team, if you're a manager, the people that report to you, all that, they're going to bring different perspectives, right? You don't want to hire mini-me's of you, right? You don't want to hire clones of you, because then you're not going to be successful, right? It's like they're always going to have the same idea you have. So they're going to totally agree with everything you say, even if it's wrong, because they're going to think the same way. So having people with different perspectives is key. Definitely people who you can trust is key. You know, who have a track record of delivering and performing. And then in terms of when you think of peer mentors and mentors and sponsors, I always tend to look for people who may have, again, a different perspective, different point of view, because I don't want them to say, yeah, you're right. Everything as you're saying is what I would do. I look for people who may provide a different perspective to mine, you know, so whether it is, you know, working in Bank of America, I had this peer of mine, she and I worked quite a bit together, and it was funny because we both had different styles, but we always got to the same outcomes, you know, in terms of we were always successful in what we did. And I love connecting with her because I knew she would bring up things that were probably blind spots for me. And she would help me with that. So never a problem to ask for help and connect with others, whether that includes people who may report to you, people who don't report to you, people who are peers or above you. Is that's, you know, I say that's something that you should create, that network of individuals that you can go and just have a conversation and get feedback. And it doesn't have to be a formal mentoring. It's just having that relationship. That's important. To me, that's been the key element that's supported me throughout my career. I mentioned the gentleman that was retiring from Bank of America. You know, when I went to Asia, he was there running the region for technology and operations. I went there to run one of the operations teams. And, you know, I hardly knew him, right? He knew my reputation. That's all he knew. But once we got together, you know, we worked and all that. When we both came back, I kept talking with him. I knew I could count on him for advice, you know, and we kept that relationship going.
I love that. And I have to tell you, Cesar, the quote that your mother shared with you really was like a trigger for everyone listening, because people have started typing in the quotes that they hear from the moms, the dads, the tios, the tias. So like, shout out to all the family members that had the one-liners, like really, you know, strong come through. And I think that's a really great reminder and a nice prompt that, you know, when you think about surrounding yourself with really good people, that starts really at home. And luckily you have been able to curate the right kind of people portfolio, so to speak, throughout your own journey. I do want to take a moment now to actually start to look at some of the questions that have come in. And I believe it was Bernardo that submitted 2 questions, and I'll start with the first one, Cesar. And I have my own 2 cents on this, but I'm going to let you kick it off. The first question is, have you ever suffered or dealt with imposter syndrome? So let's just start with that one.
Yes, you know, I talked a little bit earlier in terms of, you know, do I belong here at times? You know, and it was more predominant earlier in my career, and you got to think about it, right? It's like, so I went from electronics design manufacturing to process design executive and first mortgage. The only thing I knew was I had a mortgage, right? It's like, so you're constantly thinking, okay, am I doing the right thing? Am I, you know, but I had enough I was sure enough of my engineering skills that I'm like, you know what? And the ideas I was bringing up and the questions I was asking were things that they had not thought about. So I was like, I got this, right? I can learn the process. It also hit me 2 other times. So when I finished that job, I went to lead commercial banking servicing. And here we are, I'm going in and I'm like, okay, what products do they support? It was predominantly treasury and credit. And they're like, oh yeah, account recon, ACH. And I'm like, what the heck are all these things? I'm like, so I went and they had this learning website, and I went in there and I started searching all the product names and reading up on all the products before I even started the job. And then my first couple of weeks, I'm sitting side by side with the people on the phone, listening to the calls, seeing what they were doing, just to learn it. That same thing happened. I finished that role and I went to lead trade operations. I knew about trade finance because I was in contract manufacturing. I did materials management, but I knew it from the side of a contract manufacturer, the person buying the materials, not the finance side of it. And then I'm like, oh, wow, letter of credit, open account, supply chain finance, right? All these things that I had to learn. And I remember going to Scranton, Pennsylvania was my biggest site. And I go there and my leadership team, everyone on my leadership team had at least 20 years of experience in trade finance. I had 0. Wow. And then we get into the room and we have everyone at town hall and they say, okay, everyone who has 1 year of experience in trade finance, stand up. Everyone stands up, of course. 5 years, everyone stays standing up. 10 years, about 10 people sit down. I'm like, oh crap. I'm like, everyone here is a subject matter expert. And I'm here running the team. So talk about, how you doubt yourself. But there again, it's like as I learned the business and we started talking about like the strategy and where are we going to go and all that, that's where I could see I could add the value. Because while they knew the products really well and they knew what they did today really well, they didn't know where they could be. And that's where the value that I was bringing in, which is, guys, here's where we can go, right? Here's what is possible in terms of how we do this, support this product.
Mm-hmm. I think that's an incredible example that actually can lead into. It sounds like someone is not on mute.
We've just been making like sketches and like.
Oh my goodness! All right, thank you. All right, so that made me think about. Yes, doubt, obviously that's going to be there. But one thing I want you, to elaborate on and maybe hear yourself say out loud in front of all these incredible people are what are some of the most rewarding accomplishments that you have been involved in as a leader throughout your experiences in the financial and technology sector? So when you think about, not just, in retrospect about the doubt, the times that you maybe did not feel that you were enough, didn't have enough experience, you also have enough experience now. You're like, you know what, these are the things I'm really proud of. And would you be able to shout yourself out here out loud and let us know what some of those might be?
So I'll do 2, right? One from an purely engineering perspective. So I had 2 patents on point of sale terminal peripherals. One being a peripheral base and the reticulating arm for the monitor, and the other one being for a cash drawer in terms of how they have the sleeve of coins, and usually they break it and the coins go all over the place. So I designed something that they could score it, and then the coins would fall right out, without making a mess. Really simple stuff, right? But the reticulating arm was actually not simple because it had to hold a touchscreen. And that adds a whole new element of complexity when you're hitting it and you don't want that to move. But the other one was really that commercial bank servicing role that I did, because it had the combination of people, process, and technology. So we had all of the above, right? I took over that organization, and when I started, we started with one team, which was business banking, but the idea was we were going to bring all the various, there was like 6 different organizations that supported commercial banking in general, and it was to bring them all together, standardize the processes, reduce the number of sites, automate, improve the self-service capabilities for the client, improve the telephony, and improve our workflow. So it's like, I mean, you had everything that had to be done. And, we worked through it. We laid out the journey. We were executing upgraded leadership, right? Did all the things, we drove employee engagement, recognition. We came out with this, one of the leaders in my organization, she had this power of one, slogan, which was, hey, as an individual, you can help do anything the client needs. And as one team, we will be successful. So it was the power of one. So looking at one from two different perspectives. And, so we went through that. The funny thing is, like, as we were, our employee engagement, our client surveys were, client delight surveys were improving, employee engagement was improving, but we're like, how do we compare ourselves, right? How, what else is it that we're missing? And we brought in JD Power and Associates to do like a review. They do this client experience assessment, and they actually annually, they do, it's like an award they give out, and they measure all these servicing organizations, insurance, banking, all various industries, airlines. And we went in just with, hey, we want to know what is it that we still can do better and can learn from other industries. Funny thing is, we ended up winning the award, being recognized as one of the top. They still gave us a lot of great feedback that we ended up using. But that was, I mean, talk about being proud, right, as a team. And I remember after that, I had an offsite, and I went ahead and gave all my leaders the book Good to Great. Because I said, guys, we're good, we're not great. And I said, we need to be great, right? Even though we got this award, we are not great yet. And wouldn't you know, I left shortly after to do trade operations. That team has won the award every year since then.
Wow.
They never gave it up.
That is incredible. And is also the book Good to Great, is that a book that you would actually recommend to everyone? Because I know some people have been asking about resources. Is that a book that you would recommend to folks?
I would, I definitely would. It's a really good book, especially if you're a leader, right? It's like, because it talks about the people you bring into your team, right? There's the notion of bringing people in the bus. Don't worry about the seat they're going to occupy. If they're really good people, you want them in your bus. Yeah. And then over time, the seat allocation will work its way out. And that's why I tell some leaders that come into my organization, I'm like, hey, this may not be the job you end up at, but this is the job I have now, and we need you in the bus, right? We need you on the bus with us. The other one, right, that helped me, especially, early in my career when I was facing a lot of change. I started in Selectron when I was in Atlanta, and then we moved to Charlotte because of a site closure. And that's how I actually moved to materials management from manufacturing management, operations management. Was Who Moved the Cheese? Really simple book, but I mean, talk about being able to put into practice when you're going through dramatic change. That is the book to read, because it gives you a lot of great information.
All right, you heard it here first. Good to Great and Who Moved the Cheese. That's it. And also another feather in your cap, Cesar. Someone wrote, opening those coin sleeves was the worst when I was a teller. Bravo. So, for some, it's just a little thing sometimes.
Yeah. I was a cashier at Kmart, by the way. So when I was through high school, so yeah, I know.
Oh my goodness, I love it. There's a really great question here for you. As a Latino leader, how have your cultural experiences shaped your approach to building relationships and fostering collaboration in environments where politics can sometimes influence decision making?
Yeah, and depending on the organization, it could be like highly political. I mean, it's like what I've learned, and it's easy for me, right? I've been working, 30 plus years now, but so it's like over the years, the gray hair that you can not see because I have my wife colors my hair, but it's like and tries to remove them at least a little bit. Is the fact that you learn that, hey, being transparent and open, being respectful, right? You don't want to be, that people talk about being direct, right? There's direct and there's direct, but disrespectful too, right? It's like, But being transparent and clear with people and just being open to collaborating, I mean, usually disarms that whole politics and the other party. If you come in aggressive, you come in, very direct and all that, typically they'll put the walls up and that's it, right? It's not gonna move forward very, very much, but it's, being open and transparent, and then being yourself, right? I don't have a problem. I don't need to hide the fact that I'm Hispanic. I don't feel that, first of all, my name already says it all. Before they even see me, they will know I'm Hispanic. Now I got a funny story for you in Manila, but because they actually thought I was Filipino because of my name. And then when the lady saw me, she was actually disappointed that I was Hispanic and not Filipino. But because she thought I was a Filipino leader coming in, but still, it's like, you don't have to shy away from who you are. It's like, embrace it, right? Embrace who you are, embrace your culture, and then that actually may make the other person open up and embrace their background, embrace who they are, right? And be more open. And sometimes, that leads to a much better most times it leads to a much better relationship.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this is a very interesting question for you. So it says, can you please offer suggestions on how to analyze the power structure in corporate America without standing out as someone of color? And I know that could be interpreted a number of different ways. And that also, I would imagine, ties into how much of a role self-awareness plays. Are you aware and willing to recognize and acknowledge the power dynamics of privilege that people have, et cetera? And so talk about it from your perspective, of what is it that you think it might be helpful for people to learn and analyze the power structure?
Yeah. And having worked for a few companies, right? I always look at the leadership in the company. And many people can talk diversity, but do they actually act on it? Right. And it starts, you look at the CEO and you look at the leadership team and you say, okay, how many people of color do they have? If they have 0, okay, that's a sign that may not be a company that is very diverse, even though they say they are. Similarly, in organizations, right? If they're not, actively, recruiting, growing talent and being, driving the actions of diversity, then are they really diverse? And I've been lucky enough, the last 2 companies I've had to work with, if, in both cases, they have Hispanic leaders in their operating committees. They're very much committed to not just the Hispanic culture, but Black African American, African, Black African American, Asian, disability, people with disabilities. So they're committed, and the actions speak louder than what they say. So it's good to see that, right? Now, when it comes to how the organization operates, right, and who has the power and who hasn't, you just gotta look at the dynamics, right, in terms of, the leadership, and when you're in staff meetings and all that, who speaks up, who doesn't, where are the confrontations that take place. And especially those confrontations, you want to make sure you're not necessarily taking sides. I try to run right down the middle and try to be as objective as I can. The good thing of being an engineer, I tend to be very data-driven and very analytical, and therefore I'm like, okay, I'm going to play it based on what the facts tell me. And if the facts don't support it, then I'm not supporting it. And people know that about me, so they know where I will stand based on what the facts that are being brought forward. But try to do it that way, because you don't want to end up in the wrong side of that confrontation. Mm-hmm. And I've seen where the 2 people having the confrontation end up blaming the 3rd person that thought that was coming in to help. And that 3rd person is the one that ends up carrying the load of the blame.
And I can vouch that, not to mention not just myself, but there are a number of Wells Fargo employees who are members of the ERN, and they can all vouch. You are data-driven, Cesar. So I love that. And thank you for reminding us to do so, because data is what speaks to people. I also really respect and admire the fact that you asked us to look at the leadership, right? I always say, are individuals and institutions, are they DE&I hobbyists? Are they DE&I lobbyists? And it would be easy to see how is it that that comes through. So to that end, we are part of, at least for us here on this call, part of corporate America. And so for you as a manager and as a leader, Cesar, how have you been able to cultivate the type of workplace culture you need for your leaders and subordinates to be successful, right? What are some elements of a healthy culture that we should all strive for and continue to actually demand in some ways?
Yeah. And well, for me, it starts with my own leadership team, right? It's like if like I mentioned earlier, having a leadership team that is diverse themselves, especially in thought, right, and their experiences, that already gives you a step up in terms of how then you can go forward and operate as a team. Because if you have a dysfunctional team, that's just going to affect everything you're trying to accomplish, right? But then it's how do you drive the culture? And coming into my role, I went ahead and I created what we call placement, and it's very simple. It says, guys, we're here to deliver world-class client experience. We're going to do that by being the best place to work in. We're going to go ahead and do that by providing flawless execution, by having a risk focus, a strong risk focus, by being client focused, right? It's really simple. But then every time we have a town hall, we put that page up and say, how are we doing against this? How are we doing on being the best place to work? How are we doing? How much recognition have we done? How much internal mobility has happened? Because you got to think of what's important to your teams, right? What's important to them is they want to succeed in their career. So having career opportunities, having career mobility is important. Showing that we're doing it is important. Showing how they can do it is important. Recognition is important. So showing how much of that we're doing, how much they can do, right, is critical. We all are here to support our clients, right? Many of you are working corporations. So you are successful in your corporation because you have a client. Okay, what are we doing for our clients? How are we making that happen? And then, being able to share, and this is one where no matter how much you do, you haven't done enough, is communicate. I could not tell you how many times, we've covered things in a town hall. I covered it in an all manager call, and then I go to a site and I talk about it, and it's like people never heard about it. And I'm like, okay, we need to repeat more, and we need to share more and more and more often, because while we think we're doing great and communicating, we are falling short, right? It's like, and you have to communicate more. So those are just, in my view, right, some of the things that help in terms of achieving a really good organization and a really good culture. The other thing, I talk with my team is we need to be a talent importer, a talent developer, and a talent exporter. At the end of the day, the best organizations are those that are able to attract, retain, and grow talent. And grow may sometimes mean growing outside of our organization and helping them get to another career step, whether that is, they want to move into sales, they want to move into credit, they want to move into another operations group, is enabling that career path and opening doors for our teams to do that.
Wow. So Cesar, there's so much more that I can talk to you about, but given the time constraint, I want to make sure that I have enough time to close out. But more importantly, in honor of Hispanic Heritage Month coming up, can you give everyone maybe one lesson that you wished you learned throughout your journey that you're starting to carry with you now that everyone should adopt and consider?
Well, I would say, it's like it took me a little bit, but I, one thing that I learned was when I was making decisions of what jobs I was going to take. And you heard me, right? I took many risks, but they're all calculated risks. For every job that I took, I knew I was bringing skills that were going to be valuable in that job. So when I moved from electronics design manufacturing to process design and first mortgage, I had the engineering skills, I had the manufacturing skills that I knew would come in valuable. I didn't know something, but I knew the other things coming in. When I moved from that job to commercial banking servicing, again, I had the process work, I had the transformation experience and all that, had the people leadership, having led operations teams, manufacturing teams before, but I didn't know the products that we're supporting. So as I the nice thing is I always had something to learn. I tell people, it's like when you're thinking of another job, don't go to another job just because you have all the skills for it. Because if you do, you're going to get bored like that. I had that happen once. I took a job and they wanted me in the job because I had done the same thing already. And I was like, great. I go in and I felt like, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so boring. I was ready to get out of the job. I had not even a year in it, right? It's like, because you need a challenge, right? You need something that keeps you going. And it's that, for me, is that opportunity of learning a new skill or picking up a new product or picking up something new is what balances me out in terms of, okay, I can bring these skills and do these things, but I'm going to get something in return too.
So you can see why Cesar has gonna, he's learned the ways in which you earn a virtual applause, because that was pretty incredible. So Cesar, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
You really remind, me personally and professionally, that there is no better time to honor your story and your pathway and figure out all the ways to honor that year round, right? Not just during Hispanic Heritage Month. So thank you for all of that. He said, you heard him here first, be yourself. That's been an ongoing theme. It's wonderful to see such a rich audience coming from all sectors and backgrounds, and this could not happen or be possible without the HITEC familia and friends. So you are just all incredible human beings. And hopefully this session has reminded you to build your social capital that helps you diversify, your perspective on life and how you show up as the leader that you are while transforming into the leader you want to be. So with that said, thank you for engaging with us. And Susana, I will pass it on to you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Thank you for leading us through that Q&A. And thank you, Cesar, for all of those golden nuggets. I will say that this is our highest attendance of HITEC Live ever. So thank you to the audience. Thank you for being here. But obviously, it was a big draw given our guest speaker for today. HITEC Live is meant to bring this community together around three basic pillars: either tech-focused subject matter, professional development subject matter, or inspirational stories. Cesar, yours is definitely an inspirational story that we can all learn from. Either, I have a mortgage too. Who knows? Maybe I have a future in financial services. I don't know. It would be hard to take me out of the passion of nonprofit, but also being open to all of those different perspectives. How often is it that we come to the table with an idea of something, and when we get challenged, we automatically go into shutdown mode, like defense mode? Being open to those different perspectives and different cultures and coming from a place of seeking and curiosity, I think, is a great golden nugget that I took away. And also always open with collaboration. And especially when you're very passionate, as we tend to be, about a certain subject or a project, if you go in with the passion and equally a heart of collaboration that we all grow up with, we will be definitely successful. So as part of our closing, we will be sending each and every single one of you a survey. Your feedback is a gift to us. Your feedback truly helps to enrich this community, to enrich the programming. We want to hear from you. We want to know what you find as most valuable, so that we can always be agile and pivot, as we have learned, to be able to serve our community better. Thank you very much. I hope that you all have a great day, and at some point you take a moment just as a remembrance, because it is 9/11. And before we enter into Hispanic Heritage Month, this is a great day to stop and maybe thank somebody who has been of service in your life, or those who serve our community, firefighters and policemen especially. So thank you very much, everybody, for being part of this community. As we said, push up and pull up, all of us together. Mil gracias.
Thanks, everyone. And the
Thank you.
survey is in the chat, so you can go ahead and fill it out there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias, Cesar.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Gracias.
Tiffany. Gracias. This is where we just smile and wave as 300 individuals log off.